I've collected 20 of the top teams from the Pokemon World Championship in Japan and shared the rental codes so you can use them on the online ladder or just use the Pokepaste on Pokemon Showdown. All of these teams reached the final bracket or just fell one match win short of reaching the top cut, so they're battle proven and a good starting point to climb the online ranked ladder or build off of for in-person tournaments. Most of the rental codes in this video were shared publicly by top players from Worlds, but a lot of them did not include the EV spreads they use, so I took the time to take the teams in-game and recreate those EV spreads. Just taking them on the online ladder and then basically taking pictures of the Pokemon stats and then going to the Pokemon Showdown builder and recreating the Pokepaste, all in the description below for each team. There were some really interesting teams that were not made public, so I took the time to recreate them in-game and share the rental codes. These are with EV spreads of my making just because the spreads of the original trainers are not public, but I did my best to estimate based on the team composition the most likely spread that I could estimate. But yeah, if you appreciate the effort I've put into this resource, please subscribe to the channel. I consistently post high-level battle content with rental teams for your use, aiming to hit 1,000 subs in the near future, so any help with that would be much appreciated. All that being said, let's get into breaking down these teams. Taking it from the top, we have Shohei Kimura, who used this team to win the Masters Division World Championship. It has 6 of some of the top Pokemon in the metagame, which is just a really balanced team with tools to win in almost any matchup. I do want to highlight the techs on the team, the Terragrass Fluttermane, and the Taunt Urshifu, as well as Safety Goggles Landorus. So one really essential component of this team is beating other Amoonguss while enabling your own Amoonguss to do really well. The Grass Fluttermane is able to ignore Amoonguss, it's able to resist Urshifu Surging Strikes as an added bonus, as well as knock it out with Energy Ball, and then Taunt Urshifu lets it sit on Amoonguss and really limit its effectiveness in a game. On the other side, you also have Fake Out on your Iron Hands and Intimidate on Landorus to enable Amoonguss to get more spores throughout a game with and then potentially heal your Pokemon back with Pollen Puff. So with all the bulk on the team and all the power, it's just a really strong team. But one weakness that players have identified after the tournament was a small weakness to Torkoal in Trick Room. There's not a lot of fire resist on this team. You kind of have to count Urshifu, which, although it does resist fire, is still always going to be getting to it KO'd by an eruption from a Charcoal Torkoal, so not really a counter there. As well as Armarouge and DD Expanding Force teams, those do pretty well into everything except the Chien-Pao, in which case you have a fire type move to hit that, or just Dazzling Gleam from Indeedee. So Trick Room can be a little tricky for this team. We might see some increase in that in future events, or potentially a bit of alternation in one of the slots on the team to handle that matchup a little better. Next we have Tomoya Agawa, the Seniors World Champion. Funny note before we go on, they orient the pedestals so that the juniors and the seniors don't look so much smaller compared to the masters, just because they're still kids. So oftentimes the master is going to be a lot taller. This Worlds was funny in that both senior finalists were easily a head taller than their respective master finalists. So Zine and Michael, the masters winners, just look tiny compared to Robbie and Tomoya both. So really interesting that both of the seniors this year were just so much taller than the masters. Anyways, Tomoya's team is pretty unique in the field. It's got a Zapdos as a slower Tailwind setter. It does have the bulk and longevity with its just natural stats and Roost to get back to full HP and potentially get multiple Tailwinds up in a battle. It's such a bulky team, and if you're able to suddenly be moving first and hitting so hard and have all that longevity, it's a really difficult team to last 2 Tailwinds against. Gastrodon lets you play Arcanine a lot more aggressively against Urshifu Rapid Strike teams, and it can actually beat Urshifu without Gastrodon by just going for the Terra Fairy and then knocking them out with a Terra Fairy Blast. If they're bulkier, you can then just follow it up with an Extreme Speed and pretty consistently take that knockout. Sylveon is bulkier on the physical side than Fluttermane, that's the main advantage, otherwise you just want to go for the speed, but when you have Tailwind, that speed becomes less relevant. Urshifu is a single strike one in this case. It has Black Glasses, which is a set that's really good in Tailwind just because, well, a lot of teams have converted their defensive cores to try and cover the water type Urshifu, so lots of grass types, lots of water Terras. There's not a lot of teams that have committed lots of resources to be able to resist the dark type. So in Tailwind, if you're able to get that Unseen Fist, Black Glasses, Wicked Blow off, it's taking pretty close to a knockout in a lot of cases, especially when you have a really strong Sylveon or Arcanine pressuring spread moves with Rock Slide and Hyper Voice. The Urshifu can really get the opportunity to go off. Next, I'll be moving away from the individual teams and more looking at the archetypes that did well at Worlds. First off, we have Tailwind. So Tailwind was the most dominant style of team at the beginning of this competitive format of Regulation D, so it was interesting to see how it was going to be targeted at Worlds. The inaccuracy of Tornadus's Bleak Windstorm seemed to scare a lot of prospective players away from using it. One player even went so far as to use Air Slash Tornadus. They weren't able to cut with it, but yeah, it seemed like it still had multiple top cuts with the Bleak Wind Storm set, so a lot of inconsistency, but the Tailwind move just so strong that still able to make a lot of top cuts despite that. My favorite of these teams is Emilio Forbes' Brambleghast team. Emilio, the former Worlds finalist in 2018. But yeah, Brambleghast does exceptionally well into other Tailwind teams, which is nice because that's usually a very volatile matchup, not only just because you're going for Bleak Wind Storm pretty often, but sometimes it can depend on the amount of speed investment you've put into your Pokemon. The saying is often whoever hits first in the Tailwind mirror wins the match, so just being able to consistently take no damage from hits or really minimal damage on the Brambleghast and take knockouts right back really steeps that matchup in Emilio's favor, and I think was a really good call for the tournament. At 22nd place, Hirofumi Kimura used a really cool Life Orb Chen Pao and Choice Band Arcanine team that deals insane priority damage even when Tailwind isn't up. Although Tailwind will go up pretty consistently, it's nice for when it ends to just have that really offensive mode that can just take on knockouts with priority, like Sucker Punch off of Life Orb Chen Pao does insane damage. The Sword of Ruin Extreme Speed from Arcanine similarly is doing just more damage than you would really want to expect from a priority move, but overall this team was able to get 22nd place at Worlds, and then the following weekend is able to take first place at the incredibly stacked Wolf Click Japan Invitational, which included the world champion as well as a couple previous Japanese World Championships and really strong Worlds competitors, so that was a really cool event. Props to Wolf for holding that. It was a lot of fun to watch, and we're actually able to see some more battle footage of Hirofumi's team, and it's kind of becoming a favorite out here in the West. The Life Orb Terra Poison Chen Pao has been really impressive. A team with the same 6 Pokemon got 15th place. I've linked the Pokepaste and rental code for that in the description below if you're interested in it. It's pretty similar outside of the Chen Pao being a Focus Sash on that one. The Fluttermane's a little bit of a different set. Lastly, the Urshifu is a Choice Scarf instead of Mystic Water, so that definitely affects how the pace of the team plays. It's definitely more focused on sweeping with the Urshifu than the Chen Pao, so really cool. I was able to get one spot in the top cut further than Hirofumi, but I think the team that's really caught on more is the Life Orb Chen Pao one, which is why I've shown it here. At 35th place, Shilang Tang and a large group of players in day one played this Choice Band Urshifu Single Strike team with Choice Specs Goldengo. So this team's focus is gaining the speed advantage at getting consistent damage on the field with the Urshifu and the Goldengo, with Intimidate users Arcanine and Landorus as well as Will-O-Wisp on the Arcanine, which is a pretty rarely seen option. Being able to limit the ability of priority physical attackers to take knockouts against Goldengo and Urshifu in specific. Last up for the Tailwind teams is Barish Akosh's 44th place team. It was a stream favorite and one of the more electric teams at Worlds, featuring a bulky Terra Electric Chen Pao to knock out Urshifu Rapid Strike with its Terra Blast, as well as take special hits from things like Fluttermane and Heatran. It can actually take a Dazzling Gleam from full HP without going for the Terra, which can definitely catch your opponents off guard and let you get an attack off earlier or later in the game and just steep the battle in your favor that way. It's also got Breloom, which is a really uncommon choice for a fast Spore in Tailwind, provided by the Roaring Moon, kind of a staple of earlier formats, but really not seen in Regulation D almost at all. This is a cool set. It's got Booster Energy Speed to be getting up Tailwind pretty quick, as well as a Breaking Swipe to limit the offensive potential of Pokemon not named Urshifu. It's a very fast-paced team that looks to end battles very quickly, which is kind of exactly what you'd expect, given the team creator is Jamie Boyd, commentator and a particularly offensive player and team builder back in his day. So yeah, really cool team. I'm definitely going to be getting some battles with that myself. And I didn't even talk about the Choice Scarf Basket Legion, which with adaptability, if you bring it in late game, which a lot of the time you're going to be sacking your Roaring Moon and Breloom on lead, you're coming in with a 150 base power adaptability last respects. It's just so much damage. Jamie has claimed it's the best Pokemon in the format. I am super looking forward to testing the team myself and finding out. The second most respected archetype of team coming into Worlds was the Trick Room team, and it did manage to go very deep in several teams. So I'll start with a 12th place team from Yosuke Takayanagi, which was the most dedicated Trick Room team. This is kind of what you expect when you think of a Trick Room team. Conventionally, it's got Fake Out and Rage Power to basically guarantee that the Trick Room will go up every game. Ursaluna is the standard Trick Room sweeper this format, with the Swords Dance Terra Ghost being consistent across all three of the featured team on the screen right now. It's just really strong to be able to take neutral damage from a water type Urshifu Surging Strikes, or no damage from close combat. That's just a really nice option and an effective tear a lot of the time. Ursaluna's just been so consistent as a Trick Room sweeper this format because Flame Orb, once it activates, burns your Ursaluna and grants you essentially a Spore immunity. And it also boosts its attack stat due to Guts, and Facade's power immediately doubles, so along with its crazy bulk and its incredibly high attack power, it's incredibly hard to beat even though everyone knows exactly what it's going to be doing at Team Preview. It's just a really consistent Pokemon that's hard to take down. Yosuke had Torkoal as his secondary Trick Room sweeper, and as mentioned before, against Shohei's team it does really well. Due to limited fire resists. I could see this team being very popular for the upcoming regional cycle, especially this Terra Grass Torkoal, where maybe your one option against this team is to get a cheeky Terra Water on your Amoonguss, but if you go and then Spore the Torkoal, but if you Terra Grass your Torkoal, then that's not really going to be too effective. So really cool team. I really like the Torkoal, and as a nice secondary effect, the Torkoal's Drought setting up Sun also enables the Fluttermane to sweep with Choice Specs and a Photosynthesis speed boost once the Trick Room has ended. Now these 3rd and 7th place teams are very similar. I featured them both on the screen just because there's slight differences that might suit your preferences. Cresselia has different Terra types between the two and attacking moves, Ice Beam and Moonblast, while the Dragonite have different offensive items, but the idea here is essentially the same. I think the 3rd place team actually might have played the 7th place team on ladder at some point and taken a lot of inspiration from that. The team has 2 options really to threaten an extremely potent Iron Hands and Ursaluna sweep in Trick Room. Along with their really high HP stats, you're healing a lot of HP with Lunar Blessing, so it's hard to prevent that even though it's really obvious. Additionally, another threat is to immediately lead Icy Wind Fluttermane next to Terraflying Terrablast Dragonite. It's a really speedy Dragonite, so it'll even be able to outspeed other Fluttermanes and get immediate knockouts. The last Trick Room team is something I like to call Hyper Defense. Between all 6 Pokemon, there's collectively around 124 EVs in offensive stats. This team is fully dedicated to getting multiple Trick Rooms off, Calm Minds, Quiver Dances, Curses, and lastly, Fissures off. With the insane bulk that its team has naturally, as well as augmented by Grassy Terrain Healing, Intimidate, and the screens from Grimmsnarl. Despite being a really passive team, it had a lot of electric moments on the official stream.
So, do we see a flinch right now? Oh my gosh! He went for Fissure! He did not go for Wave Crash! That's the absolute right play! Recognizing Urshifu's doing too much damage! The first Fissure connects! And now
one style of team that defied expectations was Rain. So Rain conventionally enables a Swift Swim Pokemon to take quick KOs, with Basculegion being released in Pokemon Home. Pretty much every top player was counting on that being the main Rain sweeper. However, the most successful players used a Choice Scarf Urshifu Rapid Strikes as their main Rain sweeper, with the Rain boosted Surging Strikes doing insane damage, especially so if you go for a Terra Water, but most of them actually opted for Terra Grass to limit the effectiveness of Amoonguss, just being able to Rage Powder away their main source of offense. I think that was really smart. Rain is usually also bolstered by Pokemon that are weak to fire that just benefit defensively from it. They're able to go a little bit more on the offense. In this case, we saw lots of Goldengo as the steel type. Amoonguss defensively just really difficult to clear off the field in Rain. And Champao also, to an extent, had its fire type weakness weakened. A lot of the time, it'll still get to it KO'd by a offensive fire move, but regardless, being able to at least not go down to Focus Sash seemed to be pretty important as well. The 5th place team had a max speed Goldengo to catch slower Urshifu off guard, while the 9th place team with similar Pokemon had a Tailwind on Pelipper to keep up the Goldengo's pace, so was able to trade a bit more bulk in for a little less speed and sometimes be able to get that speed right back up with Tailwind. Both teams opted for Leaf Storm Goldengo and a Terra Grass Iron Hands, which I think was very pivotal in preventing opposing Urshifu from sweeping in their own Rain. The 40th place team is really cool. It's got a very fast Thundurus that appears defensive at first glance with the 2 support moves on the set as well as the Volt Switch, but it can outspeed and KO unsuspecting Urshifu. Along with Basculegion, it's got 2 physical attackers in the Double Dragons, so Dragapult and Baxcalibur, rounded out of course with the Chien-Pao. To tell you the truth, I don't have a great clue of what's going on in this whole team, but I can imagine Chien-Pao with all the physical attackers is just really difficult to contend with, especially with the Rain boosting the Basculegion to just absurd levels. And lastly, the Chien-Pao is actually Terra Blast with the grass typing to get the drop on other Urshifu, so really in a lot of these teams we're seeing as many things to counter Urshifu water as possible. The last team I snuck in here because it makes the graphic look better, truthfully. 5 of the Tailwind teams on one slide looks a little worse than 4, and then 4 on this Rain Slide, so it more properly belongs as a Tailwind team, I think, but hey, it's got Rain Dance, Tornadus, along with a Rillaboom and Goldango to benefit from the lowering of the fire type damage, but don't look at Hirafumi's team and also see Rain Dance Tornadus, completely ignore that. So this was actually the highest finishing Tailwind team in the tour, and it takes a much bulkier approach than a lot of the other teams with, again, like I mentioned, Rain being able to weaken the fire type damage into Goldango and Rillaboom, as well as enabling your Urshifu to do more damage, with the Tailwind forcing opponents on the defensive though, along with the Rain Dance. So while your opponent is basically trying to weather the storm of Tailwind plus the Urshifu, you're able to give your Goldango turns to set up, which is a really cool concept. I really like the less rigid style of this team, where there's obviously you can play into Tailwind, but it has a lot of bulk and potential to pivot around and play a more balanced style. The last style of team which did well at Worlds was the balanced type of team, which came out on top this weekend. So these teams are generally just focused around pivoting around your Fire, Water, Grass core, as well as just other really bulky, strong Pokemon to come out on top through really principled and focused play. Shohei's championship team in particular took up almost a fifth of the top cut. It was 5 out of 26 teams, with 2 of those teams reaching the top 4 and 1 eventually winning. So the other finalist, Michael Kelch, also had a really balanced team with an adaptable Trick Room Farigiraf that could serve either as a Trick Room counter with Imprison or set up for his slower team members against Tailwind. So yeah, really cool team from Michael. He also brought back the Dragonite Chen Pao, which ultimately won the North American International kind of out of nowhere in a different format. And very similarly, no one was really paying attention to Dragapult Chen Pao this season. It was really, again, the Chen Pao Dragonite that was dominating the format, but we're really seeing the pattern of the Dragapult Chen Pao being, although maybe a little more difficult to use, seems to be having higher peaks than a Dragonite Chen Pao, so something worth looking into if you're looking for team building inspiration. Next we have Joe UX9's Wo-Chien team, which he was able to get 19th place with. So Wo-Chien I think maybe had one major top 8 this season, but outside of that it was really silent. But this team, along with really Urshifu Water rising in usage, Wo-Chien is one of the few ways they're able to effectively limit that Urshifu Rapid Strike's damage in this format due to its ability to crit through Reflect, through Intimidate, things like that. He took full advantage of this strengthening against Urshifu in team building. He was one of the few Thunderouses in cut, and having gotten a few games with the team, the Wild Bolt Storm into Tornadus Urshifu is really strong, along with Thunder Wave just being a generally good option to things like Flutter Mane to get permanent speed decreases, as well as enabling his own Hex Flutter Mane to do double damage later in the game. So it's a really cool team with a lot of defensive pieces to position around your opponent and essentially control the pace of the game. And lengthen battles really, so that the paralysis become more and more likely to take an effect. Next is this Moltres team, which has supports in Iron Hands, Fake Out, Landorus Intimidate, and Amoonguss Spore and Rage Powder to enable you to consistently get Nasty Plot setups, as well as Berserk +1 boost. So you can actually Pollen Puff yourself back up if you go below 50 HP on Moltres and get multiple Berserk battles in that battle. Flutter Mane also has Icy Wind to let Moltres outspeed some of its trickier matchups. It'll let you outspeed Urshifu, as well as most slower Flutter Mane, Chen Pao. It's really cool in that regard. And beyond that, the team has 5 out of 6 of the championship team's Pokemon, so it's just generally really solid, with the Moltres being the standout sweeper of the team. This last team is one that I recreated, so I'm not so sure about the EVs, but I think it's one of the cooler teams of the tournament. Nails' Flutter Mane Raid Boss theme is what he's called it. The Flutter Mane essentially, so the idea is you have Klefki to set up screens to reduce damage, while also not being like a Grimmsnarl where you just get immediately knocked out by Terra Fairy Moonblast from Flutter Mane, so that's really appreciated. You also have Misty Terrain to limit Amoonguss's impact with Spore on your Flutter Mane. Gastrodon is there, so Urshifu Water can't do any meaningful damage to your team. Obviously, Surgic Strikes is able to crit through Reflect, as well as Landorus Intimidate, and then Landorus just intimidates the other physical attackers. From that point, with the physical attackers mostly taken care of in the format, Flutter Mane is free to boost its damage and special defense with Calm Mind. So any damage you take can be healed with Draining Kiss, especially if you switch in Chi-Yu to boost your special attack. Really, if you get 2 Calm Minds up, which isn't too hard with all the bulk on the team, you're really cooking, and that first Draining Kiss is going to be the most important. Once you're back up to like 70-80 HP with those screens up, with the 2 boosts, Chi-Yu on the field is just a really devastating combination. The Chi-Yu and Excalibur are just generally strong, bulky Pokemon, especially with the defensive support on the team, and can carry in matchups where the setup on Flutter Mane isn't so free. Again, this is a team recreation, so I'm the least sure about this one in terms of EVs. It looks like a very complex team EV-wise, I would have to guess, but I figured enough people would want to play this particular team that I give it my best estimation. Once again, these videos, and especially the team recreations for teams without public rentals, take some time and a lot of effort to make, so please consider leaving a like and subscription on the video. I really do appreciate it. I hope these teams are helpful in taking you up the Battle Stadium ladder for their rental teams, and then the Pokepasts are useful for Pokemon Showdown, or just useful practice in general for event prep. That is going to do it for me, guys. Please subscribe to the channel once again, and peace.